Q5061-4, unless otherwise authorized by ATC, which airspace requires the appropriate automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, ADSB, equipment installed. A. Within Class E airspace below the upper shelf of Class C airspace. B. Above the ceiling and within the lateral boundaries of Class D airspace up to 10,000 feet MSL. C. Within Class G airspace 25 nautical miles from a Class B airport. The correct answer is C. ADSB systems must be installed on hero planes in any airspace that requires the use of a transponder. From the ground up to 10,000 feet MSL, ADSB is necessary while operating within 30 nm of an airport that is mentioned in Appendix D of Part 91. 5063. In accordance with 14 CFR Part 91, supplemental oxygen must be used by the required minimum flight crew for that time exceeding 30 minutes, while at cabin pressure altitudes of A. 10,500 feet MSL up to and including 12,500 feet MSL. B. 12,000 feet MSL up to and including 18,000 feet MSL. C. 12,500 feet MSL up to and including 14,000 feet MSL. The correct answer is C. No one is allowed to fly a civil aircraft with a U.S. registry. 1. At cabin pressure altitudes above 12,500 feet MSL up to and including 14,000 feet MSL, unless the required minimum flight crew is given and uses supplemental oxygen for that portion of the flight at those altitudes that is longer than 30 minutes. 2. At cabin pressure altitudes above 14,000 feet MSL, unless the required minimum flight crew is given and uses supplemental oxygen during the entire flight time at those altitudes. And 3. At approximately 12,500 feet MSL and above, unless the required minimum flight crew. 5064. What are the oxygen requirements when operating at cabin pressure altitudes above 15,000 feet MSL? A. Oxygen must be available for the flight crew. B. Oxygen is not required at any altitude in a balloon. C. The light crew and passengers must be provided with supplemental oxygen. The correct answer is C. According to 14 CFR Part 91.211, supplemental oxygen must be provided to all occupants of an aircraft operating at cabin pressure altitudes above 15,000 feet MSL. This includes the flight crew, passengers, and any other people on board the aircraft. Here are some of the reasons why supplemental oxygen is required at these altitudes. The air becomes thinner at higher altitudes, which means that there is less oxygen available for breathing. The body needs more oxygen to function properly at higher altitudes. Without supplemental oxygen, the flight crew and passengers may experience hypoxia, which is a condition that occurs when the body does not have enough oxygen. Hypoxia can cause a number of problems, including dizziness, headache, confusion, nausea, fatigue, loss of consciousness. In severe cases, hypoxia can be fatal. If you are flying an aircraft that is operating at cabin pressure altitudes above 15,000 feet MSL, it is important to ensure that all occupants are using supplemental oxygen. You should also be familiar with the symptoms of hypoxia and how to treat it. 5067. Approved flotation gear, readily available to each occupant, is required on each aircraft if it is being flown for hire over water. A. In amphibious aircraft beyond 50 nm from shore. B. Beyond power-off gliding distance from shore. C. More than 50 statute miles from shore. The correct answer is B. According to FAR 91.205, approved flotation gear, readily available to each occupant, is required on each aircraft if it is being flown for hire over water and beyond power-off gliding distance from shore. This means that if the aircraft is flying over water and it would not be able to glide back to shore, then each occupant must have approved flotation gear readily available to them. The FAA requires this because it is important for occupants to be able to survive in the water if the aircraft were to crash. Flotation gear can help occupants stay afloat and warm until they can be rescued. 5066, which is required equipment for powered aircraft during VFR night flights. A. Flashlight with red lens if the flight is for hire. B. An electric landing light if the flight is for hire. C. Sensitive altimeter adjustable for barometric pressure. The correct answer is B. According to the FAA's regulations, all aircraft that are operated for hire during VFR night flights are required to be equipped with an electric landing light. This is because a landing light is essential for allowing the pilot to see the ground during landing and takeoff. A flashlight with a red lens is not required equipment for powered aircraft during VFR night flights. However, it is a good idea to have one on board in case of an emergency. A sensitive altimeter adjustable for barometric pressure is also not required equipment for powered aircraft during VFR night flights. However, it is a good idea to have one on board in case of inclement weather.